On your marks. The announcer's voice silences the crowd, runners and spectators alike. I can't believe I'm racing against runners, world-class runners from across the globe, and remind myself again, this is only 3.5 miles. I've got this. Set. With a crack of the gun, I launch forward, immediately forgetting the number one rule of racing, to pace myself. Soon, the gazelles I passed at the start effortlessly glide past me. About a half mile in, I'm already out of breath. The 1 mile marker approaches on my left, and I'm both relieved and devastated to know how much farther I still have to run. I can do this. Pace yourself, Emily. One more step becomes my mantra. In the unseasonable afternoon heat, I silently wish for a breeze when suddenly I'm stabbed in the forehead. My eyes squeeze shut, and I reach for my right eyebrow, but there's no knife. The pain is excruciating, but I've been training for this race for months. I can't stop. As I gain distance, the knife in my forehead is dragged across my head to the back of my neck in a straight line. Next time, I'll hydrate better. Forget the PR. Just finish this race strong. I soon begin to feel lightheaded, experience tunnel vision, but the course is clear in front of me, so I press on in agony. Focus on your feet, I think to myself, but why are they so heavy? More and more runners pass me. The line across my head throbs with each heartbeat. This race has got to be over soon. I say a little prayer when, at the 3 mile mark, I can see the finish line in the distance. I round the curve to the last straightaway before the finish line, barely running at this point, hardly the triumphant finish I had planned. Over the next few minutes, I experience more bizarre symptoms. When I ask for a Gatorade, my own voice sounds as if it's coming through a long, hollow tunnel. I'm unable to unscrew the cap with my left hand. I'm surprised to see alarm on my friend's face, my friend and teammate, who I later found in the crowd. Afterwards, she told me that half of my face was drooping. Simultaneously, a group of bystanders approached me with a wheelchair, forcefully took me to the medical tent, and I remember thinking, how do all these people know I have a headache? A doctor asks me to smile, raises my hands, and says, keep them raised when I let go. My left arm dropped. In the best shape of my life, I was suddenly and instantaneously paralyzed on the left side of my body. 10 minutes after crossing the finish line, I hear the words, Emily, you are having a stroke. I'll admit that at age 27, I had no idea what a stroke was, really. Didn't old men have them? A CT scan confirmed, as you can see, that I did indeed have a stroke, and mine was, fortunately, ischemic, which means due to a blood clot. Also, fortunately, that qualified me to receive the miracle drug TPA. This would be my best chance at regaining normal physical and cognitive functioning. The ER doctor said there was a small chance it would, in fact, cause hemorrhaging in my brain, but they'd monitor me really closely during the 24-hour danger window. One more thing. In the ICU, One more thing. This drug must be administered within 3 hours of the onset of your stroke. You've got 1 hour left. What do you want to do? I remember seeing the name on his white coat blur with my tears. What would you do? He looked at me and smiled sadly and said I would want the drug. In the ICU, it was now 9:30, and the magnitude of what was happening began to set in. What if I don't survive to see my parents when they get here? A nurse woke me up every 20 minutes to check my vitals, the strength of my hands, arms, legs, and feet. Can you tell me where you are? What day is it? I remember saying millions of times, it is still May 21st. A speech therapist came to see me and determined that I was now approved to chew and swallow soft foods. As you can imagine, after exercising, everyone's starving, and I hadn't eaten for over 24 hours. An occupational therapist helped me shower for the first time 3 days after running in a race. A physical therapist helped me walk to the other side of my room and eventually cleared me to walk to the end of the hallway, aided by my mom. My dad took this picture. It's the only one we have from the hospital. I was surprised to find myself winded. Oh, I can't go back, actually. I was surprised to find myself winded and experience buckling in my left leg, and it finally hit me that this wasn't over yet. I had survived this, but I knew I had a long journey ahead. On the 5th day, we got to go home, and my parents later told me it felt like taking their newborn home from the hospital. There's no manual on what to do next. Oh, thank you. 3 weeks later, a routine MRI showed that I had actually experienced a second stroke in the center of my brain. This was presumably due to the residual blood clot breaking off that had formed my first stroke, but in those first groggy few days and weeks following the stroke, it was impossible for me to know when that would have occurred. My brain struggled to do what had once come so easily. Reading became a challenge. I could only remember one sentence at a time. Watching TV and following a TV show was impossible. Once my natural mood booster, I could no longer run. A friend later took me to lunch, and when leaving a tip, I learned that I can no longer add or subtract. To this day, I'm still numb on the left side of my body, so relearning to tie my shoe, put my hair in a ponytail, type on a keyboard took great effort, and I still can't feel the keys on my left hand. It's kind of a weird sensation. Between napping, my newly retired mom kept me company on the couch, and I remember telling her, I don't want what happened to me to go to waste, but I had no idea what that would mean. Once I could use a computer, I started researching everything I could about stroke in young people and what the heck to do next. I found Teddy's Team, an organization which runs races to raise money for the American Stroke Association and fund critical research. Pun intended, joining them was a no-brainer. Throughout the following months, I worked up to walking longer and longer distances, gradually incorporated short runs and some hikes. 11 months after nearly losing my life, I ran a half marathon and raised over $6,000. Thank you. Thank you. I raised over $6,000 for, again, critical research that would indeed save future lives of people just like me. And that's when I realized that this stroke would and could result in bigger and better things. As a runner, I trained myself to run through the aches and pains, and this was the reason why, on that fateful day, I ignored not one, but 3 groups of bystanders who noticed that something was wrong with me. It's also the reason why, during those first post-stroke runs, I cried tears of joy, realizing I get to feel this pain in my foot. I get to experience this. Around that time, I learned of Go Red for Women. Just a quick show of hands, I'm curious. How many of you have heard of Go Red for Women before? I had never heard of it until doing all my online research and learned that Go Red for Women, for those of you who aren't familiar, is an organization is a division of the American Heart and Stroke Association. It's a movement for empowering women to fight the risk of heart disease and stroke, our number 1 and number 3 killers, respectively. I began sharing my story where and whenever I could, urging women to listen to their bodies when something didn't feel right, since I had ignored mine. I gave cards to family, friends, and complete strangers with the FAST acronym on them to teach warning signs of stroke to everyone I encountered. It stands for, if you can't read it, face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty, and time to call 911. Time is critical. We could say time lost is brain lost. And I later learned I lost almost 3 million brain cells during the time of my stroke. Never in my wildest imagination could I have envisioned what this horrific day would result in. In 2015, I ran the Boston Marathon with Teddy's team. I became a national spokeswoman for Go Red for Women, and I threw the opening pitch at the annual Strikeout Stroke event at Safeco Field against the Cleveland Indians. Last year, I ran with Marnie Hughes on Q13 to spread the knowledge of stroke warning signs during Heart Month. I shared my story with Hoda Kotb on the Today Show exactly 3 years to the day after walking out of the hospital. That was pure coincidence. Today, I'm extremely proud to be an inaugural patient champion for My Research Legacy, which encourages young stroke and heart survivors to share their medical data for improving future treatments. On Monday, I will be working with scientists at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, and serving as a patient advocate on the External Oversight Board for their stroke net. In times of trauma, the brain can do just about anything to cope, comes up with any type of excuse. Cancer survivor and Good Morning America host Robin Roberts is one of my heroes, and I've taken her advice to heart. Make your mess your message. I may not look like the face of stroke, but if one person here, anywhere in my lifetime, hears my story and helps save a life, I would relive May 21st, 2013 in a heartbeat. Thank you.